the Art House Gallery and Cultural Center. Support the Art House, support the Art House. And here is Richard Silberg, Associate Editor of Poetry Flash, to introduce the poets.
Hi, David Watts is going to be reading first. He is amazingly prolific. We've got, I think, 3 books on the table. The book that I've read is Katy Bridge. There are aphorisms and haiku in the other books. Katy Bridge is a beautiful book of memory, and there's some beautiful love poems. The language, you'll hear his language is imagistic. The language pulses and it moves in and out with the light of what he's talking about. I may be repeating myself, but I already say there are beautiful love poems here. There's a poem of his son talking, which he may or may not read as he chooses, but that's charming. There's humor, there's wisdom, and as I said, the images move the work. So let's give him a warm welcome. David Watts.
Thank you. I'm so enamored with Joyce and Richard, aren't you all? Huh? What they do is simply amazing, and they give such a vibrancy to the spirit of poetry in the Bay Area, and have been doing this for, I won't say how many years, but we are very grateful to you for all these things that you do. And thanks also for this house, which is welcoming us and bringing us back to the 1967 Summer of Love, which of course is one of my favorite times. So, as some of you know, I've had a bumper year, 5 books, and I'm expecting a long drought to be coming very soon. But the books, though they all are about or related to poetry, are very different. I'm going to read a sample from each one. The first one is haiku, that was published in January by Red Moon Press. The second one is a book written in a voice, in a pseudonym, which I consider to be deep conscious reading. I'll read some of that. The third one is the one that Richard talked about, which is Katy Bridge. Those are poems. The fourth one out this week is aphorisms. I hesitate to call them aphorisms because I think that's something that is earned, not necessarily given. So we'll see if they survive long enough to be classified as an aphorism. But I had collected a lot of things that I'd written about over the years, and they seem to come together in this book, which is called Daily Bouquet. And then the last book is a book of translations that I collaborated with a Mexican woman who is a haiku poet, and it's translating haiku poetry from the first Hispanic haiku poets of America. So I began with this book, Seed Kites, which is haiku. And these go by pretty quick, because they, as you know, they are 17 syllables or less. And the American versions of haiku are often less than 17. They can be 10 or 11 syllables. So you have to pay attention. mini drought, the river unfolds around a rock. Summer day, no telling where that fly just was. These are arranged by times of the year, so seasons. We're starting in summer, so we'll keep going there. Tree climbing weather, the face of my child in branches. Honey jar, sticky fingers every time. Pumpkin rose, a ripple of jackrabbit. So we're into autumn now. Open meadow, twilight so heavy the grass bends. First winter together, learning her seasons. Freezing in the duck blind. I don't even like duck. Snowy owl, a billow of moonlight on a branch. And now into springtime. Break of day, birdsong pulls in the light. Barn dream, picking glints of hay from her hair. In the wind, even the broken reed can sing. So that's it for haiku. Now this, Ellis Mode, is written in the voice of Harvey Ellis. Harvey is my first name. It's also my father's first name. And Ellis is my mother's maiden name. And I gave this name to my pseudonym because I wanted to protect it from other writing that I was doing. I had been writing what I would call narrative poems, and I was having fun doing that, but I also wanted something different, something wilder, something associative in voice rather than linear thinking. And of course the brain that you wake up with in the morning is a very linear thinking brain. It wants to get you to work on time or not. It wants you to balance your checkbook and stuff like that. But it doesn't have a very creative side to it, or at least it doesn't have that side to it that is leaping, like Robert Bly likes to describe. So these poems are a little bit out there, and they're different in that way. And the first poem I'm going to read is one which actually happened. And I also have made little pieces of paper that have this poem on them, which will be here also. It's called And She Said. And she said the bird flew directly at her and chirped 3 times, then flew into the tree. What she meant to say was that bird carried some of his spirit. And I wondered what part of the soul flies into a bird and signals the grieving loved one like that. I imagined the color orange shifting its weight into the strings and pulleys that flapped the wings until it made its signal of goodbye. Just a little trail of I love you in the ripple it made on the surface of the air. Affair. Her solution to the problem of her affair was a threesome. The husband thus had 2 astonishments to deal with, and that while opening his bedroom to a stranger. The ripples of this extended widely as the old life no longer lived outside memory. A new insanity floated through the rooms, inviting ideas like why not a foursome, Why not adding someone as yet to be determined, 20 years younger? He could see the retribution in that. He kind of liked it as a price of admission. But where would all this stop if not at the point of refusal, which was fading quickly down the road behind them? And the writing uncovered what was underground, writhing and squirming like a landed gar, especially what she didn't know about, as if a melon shred opened simply by putting words on the page. The words sizzled in sunshine like a melted witch. But the meaning was not lost. The experience was like fingernails on a rusty pipe. Even so, she was grateful for this new sense of contentment she could not explain. My parents' grave. I waited for messages, but found none. And the wind hovered at the ridge of the yard, like a homeward surge missing something. My hard listening asked me, what have I missed? But the mist stayed out there with the wind and told me nothing, waiting patiently there as stories and unread books. I was in no hurry, having come miles and years to this place where I could stop and listen, which was, it turned out, the blessing itself. The strange behavior of ideas. Some ideas surface like fishing corks that bob and shift, or spread and cluster as insects on a tablecloth. Some sparkle, some glow with desire, some speak 3 languages. I like the slow ones arriving as packages of gravity in the evening mail. The manageable shapes and the little surprises you might need a pencil in a dark room to capture. Reminds me of growing up, scratching the darkness for ideas. Some came vital, some came like fossils, all shape and no life. Or maybe inside the geometry of another geometry turning inside out. How these shapes invent themselves, how they dance. Filter. The star through a curtain is still a star, even though its light is forced through a tea strainer. When the photons leave the source, we're kind of lost control. But if I move my head sideways, the light picks a different part to filter through. How important then is my eye to where the light decides to go? I was thinking about this until a cloud came over. That's it for Harvey Ellis. And so now we have Katy Bridge, which is somewhat more regular poems, I suppose. This bit of publishing is always so strange. You go for years and years and nothing happens, and then suddenly it seems like it all comes together. Katy Bridge is a bridge outside the town I grew up in Central Texas. And it was a place of much in the way of memories, but also rumors and myth. So this is a tribute to that. And as a metaphor for the childhood, of course, a tribute to a lot more. Katy Bridge. Rumored to be a lover's leap over shallow water, home of ghosts, river running low in summer. Thought I remembered standing next to the girders one time, pressed flat by the bellow of a passing train. Turned sideways to the eyes of an awkward death that lured me there, foolishly there. I ignored his stare and did not die. Never sure I really did that. The bridge probably made it up, where the memories splatter like oil on the rails. Mostly, it was a place to take your girlfriend for a scare, a kiss and a dare, and beat it when the rails start to shake. Rare seasons I had one, girlfriend that is. Scary thought, trains and girlfriends. What I can say is that walking the rails gets a tad different with trestles on either side of you. Always a train somewhere up the tracks headed your way. The rails alive, like snakes slithering. The 4 o'clock hissing its way down from Waco. That's what it's like in Central Texas. 2 deer in early morning. They came to my back door. The mother, tall and slender, a smudge of gray, and the small one, a speckled fawn, neither confident nor afraid. They were munching my green grass, their furry kingdom close enough to reach into. I could almost stroke their ears, delicate as a breath. What would it be like to move with grace the way they do, gliding among the narrow trees? To dissolve in forest and reappear without regret or sorrow. If I stand very still, they will go back to chewing a tuft of summer grass. If I move, the fawn will turn her fire-streaked eyes on me, asking to know me for who I am. Conversation just a heartbeat, not spoken. Then the moment changes, for something has been watching from the forest and reaches now to draw them back, as if their world had waited too long to call them home, as if they were never there. You might hear a little of Jane Hirschfield in that poem, because that's where the inspiration came. This poem has been a favorite of some who have read this book. I was unsure of it. I was unsure of even publishing it. But maybe it touches some rather deep nerve. We'll see. Since you will leave me, or I will leave you. Because the light is fading, and because it has been told to do so, the street lamp embers up, embers down, ignition heading at the spark. Barely on, barely off, it pulses in the dying light. A little wind, a tuft of hair drifting, and the shape of a woman moves through the forms she takes, leaving in twilight. I watch, with the same eyes I have watched you bathing, soaken with sweat and with longing. My body folded into yours as now, even across this distance, even against the wind and the light. We are older, and we know love is eventually about leaving, isn't it true? That is why every small leaving is tender. And the road of departure is still moving like departure halfway into the world where the edge, where the two worlds meet. She looks back, and the sun, which used to fade without hesitation, snags on its last illumination, orange with longing, clinging to the edge of the earth. Father, son, and dishes in the sink. Would you help your father unload the dishwasher, she says. And Gabriel turns his feet from the strong magnet pulling him to the sanctity of his room, where his parallel universe lives, and he will descend into the unreachable. He stretches a hand and lifts a spoon to its place among the community of spoons in the drawer. I squeeze 5 plates together to move them to the cabinet. He does the same. I reach for the missing mixing bowl, and our fingers touch, and my father is certainly in the spaces between us, humming his tone-deaf tune as he tilts a glass into its perfect slip. I have watched him turn the glass just so among the elders standing like sentries on the shelf. And now my son watches me, imitating the reflection of my father down through the generations. 2 of us working, and the dishes disappear 3 times as fast, and he is gone to his world that pulls him gently away. It's fine. He carries with him my father and me and more I will never know. So the last poem I'm going to read you from this book is called Jenner Stones. At Jenner by the sea we scurry over boulders to the place where the breakers bear down, the edge where the rub and thrust rinses everything finally clear. It has taken a long time to get here, past failures at love, at marriage. But sometimes, after all, there is an accident of grace. We are cautious and treasure everything in our tennis shoes. We teeter over the runnels that rush between footings in which, emptied by the gasp and suck of the sea collapsing back, we find the small stones we came for, freshettes of color like floral nuggets compressed to their smallest density. Jadeite, feldspar, serpentine, and the one with the orange mango cloud marbling through like a fossilized sunset. We cannot know where they came from, though we imagine an ancient vein glowing under 1 billion years of sediment somewhere up the Russian River. A cliff quarried by the current's constant fingers, and then fanned from the river's mouth and tossed on this beach like jewel stones left by a passing goddess. I press them between my thumb and forefinger. It may not be so bad to go on for years with nothing happening, nothing but the downward heft of sediment, and then this blossoming. So I have 2 books left. I'm just going to read you a short piece from some of them. I'm going to, the book that I just read came out last month. This next book, which is the translation book, I'm just going to read a couple of quick things from it. It's coming out in January. And it's translating 3 poets, first from Mexico, then from Guatemala, and then from Ecuador. It's haiku, so they're quick. The bees. The apiary drips non-stop its honey, every drop a bee. Moth. Return to the bare branch, nocturnal butterfly, the dry leaves of your wings. The ravens, burned papers that swirl in the wind. And finally, nut. Pardon me. Nut, compressed wisdom, tiny vegetable turtle, goblin brain, paralyzed forever. So the last thing I'm going to read some things from is that collection of aphorisms. And I don't know why I sit down to write poetry in the first place. I don't know why I sit down to write haiku. These things just happen. And sometimes you start thinking about spirits in the walls that are teaching you what to do next. Usually this happens around August for some reason. All right, so these are going to be in the book, which is coming out this week. Not the flowers, but that you brought them. We are tumbling through the universe on a curveball. The kiss is a door that wants to open. Teenage lasts from 30 to 50. Much deserves forgetting. Time is just a place with a strange address. It takes considerable attachment to want to clean the room, particularly my son. Good reasons don't always justify the action. The universe has questions too. Some politicians believe in divine corruption. Some friendships last forever, some wash away with soap. A dance speaks words that words cannot say. Success is all hard work. Success is all hard work and mostly luck. Love is able to say, I'll let you go. Nothing like winning an election to destroy your sense of morality. Optimists make the best cynics. The holy bow to those less fortunate. In the dark of winter, remember spring will weave her carpet of light. Someone inside us is always kissing somebody. And then this I'm going to read as an epilogue to the entirety of the reading, something that I jotted down a couple of days ago. Everything we know and love will pass. The nuthatch on the feeder, the wind rising over the hill, the infant waking up from sleep. Nothing will change that. But be at peace. Every day tell yourself you are lucky for having loved as much as you could. Thank you very much.
Second reader, Rafaella Del Bourgo. Raffi to me, but Rafaella, beautiful name. There's real joy for me in this reading because Raffi has spent a life of poetry, won a lot of prizes, got published in a lot of magazines, but this is her first major publication. So that's a creative birth. It's a beautiful thing. And her book, Tunes Both Familiar and Strange, will come out in summer 2025. A long time away, but we get the joy of, you may read some from Inexplicable Business, but we have the joy of hearing these poems. And there's a whole arc of life in this book. It begins with Sephardic grandparents in far-flung places like Japan and Shanghai and Turkey, and curves around. So the book ends with her parents in the afterworld. And there's a whole rich life through that. Travels, drugs, loves. And these poems are vivid and detailed, but they're also sometimes succinct. So there are poems that end and then go on thinking. And there are other poems that are like symphonic poems. But you'll hear a life here, a life happening in a beautiful book. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Richie, and thank you, Joyce, for organizing this. And I want to say that there's this old rhyme, make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver, and the other is gold. And I feel very wealthy tonight to have you all here. So the first two poems I'm going to read are from my chapbook, Inexplicable Business Poems, Domestic and Wild. And even if you don't read the book, go look at the cover, because the photograph on the cover is perfect. And how often do you see something that's perfect? Not very often. So all these poems in this book are about animals, or they revolve around animals. Dolphins in Shark Bay, Australia. In lazy circles they cruise the shallows, heads up, hungry for the land, the air. One slides along my legs, and when I reach out to stroke her rubbery skin, she smacks her tail like a cranky ant tired of company already. A nudge behind my knees, and here is another dolphin with a fish in his mouth. I take it gingerly, avoiding his white picket teeth, and, glad the fish is dead, caress the animal's warm flank, read the billboard near the high tide mark, returning a fish is bad manners. One dolphin swims to a yellow lab standing up to his chest in the cool blue ocean. The dolphin pushes her beak into the dog's black nose, rubs her face against coarse fur. A woman on the shore calls, "Magic, magic!" but the dog does not move. The dolphins gather wearing those freakish grins, the ones they use jumping through hoops or swallowing snapper. Then they swim west and away. The dog and I stare after them, the fish a cold and slippery gift in my hand. Black lizard. I found a very small, petrified lizard, black, perfect toes, perfect tail, its eyes closed as if briefly asleep. I lifted it carefully, carried it home, placed it on a scrap of white velvet in a plastic case, put the case on my dresser top. My lover said, "This is most unusual." I said, "I'll call him Lislow." Events unfurled this way. The lover was too young, his knuckles unbloodied, teeth white as the idea of youth itself, and I sent him away to find. He left behind only a shirt, printed with flowers, with sailboats. "I've been to sea," I told Lislow, "when the waves folded like the pages of a book. At night in the harbor, the moon bled milk. I drank quickly so it wouldn't sour. At night in the harbor, the moon seeped a cloud of mist. I inhaled and filled my lungs with silver light. Early in the morning, I swam in circles with the fishes, melancholy and noble. Everything was splash. Everything was delphinium, chrysanthemum. Let me summarize matters for you so far. I sent a young lover out to find. I spent some days talking to a lizard, perfect but dead. This is what I explained to Lislow. I was grateful not to be a shark, an eel, a jelly, a desolate narwhal. I swam until I became blue, and when I returned to the boat, I no longer cast a shadow. As Richie said, my Sephardic family is far flung. This is called olive oil from my Sephardic grandmother, Julia Del Bourgo. I remember eyes like sapphires, dark moles in the folds of her neck, her bosom skillfully imprisoned in linen. Olive oil must be deep green and pungent to evoke other memories, sautéed fava beans, roasted chicken, rice blushing with tomato, and raisins plump with steam, cream puffs for dessert, flower caught in her diamond ring. We were fed advice, never buy a used book, people are dirty. Those crab apples are sour, your mouth will pucker up and stay that way forever, no one will want you. We don't take the bus, we'll never have to, God willing, we take cabs. Kosher meat is always best, don't try to fool me with that trait from Albertsons. In her birthplace, Massawa, Eritrea, where she could hear the lions cry outside the compound walls, she attended the only school for girls. Nuns taught women's work. On Shabbos, her father, a colonel in the Italian army, brought in hungry Jews to feed. Her mother emptied the larder and silently served them. Before grandmother's blood broke, the betrothal was sealed by mail. The family, with its too many girls, lacked dowry, and who but a cousin would have her? Wrapped like a gift against the ocean's cold, she was shipped to Shanghai, handwritten recipes in her trunk. Among the rickshaws on the dock, a stranger, my grandfather, elegant and contained in a downpour. After 20 years and 2 boys, before Mao marched and the last emperor fell, grandfather got the family and its fortune out, settled into the house on Tiger Tail Road in Brentwood, comfortable amongst the wealthy and the famous. She ruled her house with a wave of her hand and commands in Ladino. She knitted and sewed, taught the proper way to behave. Don't be familiar with the maid, she's robbing us blind. It's not ladylike to run. Don't wear that frou-frou blouse. Dress well, and you too will marry a Del Bourgo. Keep the line pure. In her curio cabinet, animals of yellowed ivory, amber, and jade, a small herd of horses, 3 monkeys, a Pekingese. Dressed up in dotted Swiss, I was allowed to play with them, but carefully, behind the striped silk couch with dragon's feet. When I go, she said to me, all these will be yours. But after grandfather died, in the small apartment, the antiques buyer with a mustache arrived. Month by month, the creatures were sold as I secretly wept in one room and grandmother in another. I wear her earrings of platinum and pearls, make filling for break us the old way, stir spinach and onions, ground meat and garlic in sizzling olive oil. A knob of hard candy between my teeth, I sip bitter tea from her gold-rimmed cup, close my eyes, lean against the kitchen counter, listen for the sound of the lion's cry. This is an epistolary poem, which means it's written in the form of a letter. Dear Father, this year I turn 67, the age grandfather was when he died, the age grandmother was when she died, your age when you died. Since you left 30 years ago, I have read 2,000 books, if you count the mystery trash, and loved every word. I stopped eating the crusts of bread, which always taste dry and burned, even when they're not. I balance my checkbook like you taught me. Husband number one was a romantic error. Father, I cut him loose, and he flew free. After many companions, I settled in with husband number two, 29 years and counting. He gently bites my shoulders to wake me in the morning. Look at the cat lifting her head, love eyes half closed. She's lying on our couch, painted in sun. And look on the sideboard, there is one last piece of apple pie. Father, I am still so very hungry. This is called Roses and Moons. Through the window, a thumbnail moon caught in the fingers of a quaking aspen. The leaves are gold and remind me of Mother's ormolu clock with an inscription reading, "Lost hours are never found again." She lies in her bed, a great blue heron, that patient hunter atop her chest. There is a blush of rose along its neck. It is immobile for many minutes, then plunges its dagger-sharp beak deep into her breastbone. She cries out twice, then lapses into silence. The bird cocks its head, listens to the heart still beating. On a nearby table, with a card from the sender, the requisite roses, flower of love, stuck in a cut glass vase, the thick stems wrapped with crimson ribbon, the satin pierced with thorns. I am so very, very small. I live in her sweater drawer among the cashmeres and merinos. The drawer is always ajar, so I can stand on a rose-red cardigan and peer over the edge. If I were big enough, strong enough, I would sweep away that blue-gray bird with a broom, let it perch on the horns of that moon tangled in the aspen tree. I would sit my mother up and feed her toast with marmalade. As the clock ate time with its little wheels, I would float the brush through her halo of hair, then gently bathe her face, her shoulders and back with the softest sponge and warm water scented with lavender. I've done a lot of traveling. I say that with a smile. These next few poems are traveling poems. This is called Ship. bride from the little beach resort southeast of Karachi. She's feverish with malaria, sailing through the desert in heavy seas. Dunes and brush. One might erupt into fire, but there's no time to talk to God. On her way back to town, 3-story hotel, bed with sheets, doctor who speaks English, and damn the expense. The others murmur, part of the desert medley, its gusts and bluster. The camels grunt, air their complaints. How the toes splay into the dirt with each step. They are the way out and the only way back. She falls forward, camel's golden hair clutched in her hands, her face against the rough blanket. The smell sears her clothes, her skin. Halter bells jingle a Bedouin tune, like lines wind-driven against a metal mast. The tides, ships splash into water. She says to the others, curse all mosquitoes, and tries to smack the side of her neck. She says to herself, I must stay calm. Then a firestorm. Someone's lit a match. In the distance, the horizon line wavers behind a stand of palms. In front of them, a door unhinged, half covered with sand. Words burned into the wood. You thought you could trespass here. In a Berlin bar, Stella says at first, I am not a lesbian. I say, I'm not one either. On the stage, a full orchestra, warm 30s jazz. Men, mostly dressed in glittery hats and straps, dance with other men. And the women in 3-piece suits, striped, and ties, dance with other women. The slender man I came with, who is not enough of a woman or maybe too much of a woman, is dancing with Stella's pretty brother, who is wrapped in a red silk dress. Outside, winter snow. Inside, my friend laughing, head tipped back, his white throat exposed. Stella glances at him, says, I have faith. God does not pay attention to what we wear. God does not make judgments about who we love. I've heard this before and shrug. She is plain, chalky moon-faced, flat eyes the color of slate. She is also in a silky dress, keeping time with her lacquered fingernails on the tabletop. Come on, she tells me. We might as well. I'll be the girl first, and then we can change. We make our way onto the floor. She places my right hand on her waist, which is both tender and firm, rests her left hand on my shoulder. Stella's good. We move easily to the music, a tune both familiar and strange. I lived in Tasmania for a year. This is called Winter, Lower Longley, Tasmania. With a butter knife, I scrape frost off the inside of the kitchen windows, and there they are again, cow faces with their dark eyes, noses breathing steam, feet stamping in the snow. Like the lamb from the farm up the hill and the black cat, they want to come in. They want to come in out of the cold, into the house which will be warm as soon as the logs catch. On the table, 6 ripe apricots blushed with sun, plump with sweet water all the way from California, flown in then purchased at great expense from the one market in town. I open the door for the cat, then shut it quickly against the lamb and a possible cow stampede. Sip a cup of coffee with milk and sugar the way I like it. As snow continues to drift down, the cows wear white caps, white as the lamb who has kicked down his fence again and is huddled on my back porch. 2 possums snuffle, snouts to the ground near the woodshed looking for something to eat. From the marsupials of Tasmania poster, I learned they are brushtails. Sulfur-crested cockatoos winging overhead screech like rusty hinges. The cows moo in response. The cat wakes up, raises her head, and yawns. These sounds and the occasional whoosh of a lone car on our country road are all that interrupt the silence of falling snow. We have no radio and no phone. We brought 10 albums with us, and I've listened to them so often that now I'm yelling at Waylon Jennings. Either go to the rodeo with Willie or grow up and stay with your pregnant girlfriend, but whatever the hell you do, just stop your damn whining. I slept all night, yet I'm so tired. My husband is dazzling them at the university, and I fear that the turn my life was supposed to take has already happened. I am sitting here alone, cows smearing my windows with their noses and tongues, tilting their heads right and left, the cat on my lap, the lamb taken from the flock as a plaything for the farmer's sons, still desolate on my porch. I'm waiting, I'm watching the fire burn, I'm hoping it will warm up, and maybe, just maybe, this is it. Even though I'm living somebody else's life, maybe this is the turn. This is called Grief's Weird Sister. Your whole body aches. I understand, although no specific part really hurts. I have been such a body. I have cried for a year, a box of Kleenex on the passenger seat of my car. I could say to you, time. I could say to you, rice pudding cold from the fridge, or the smell of bread baking in your neighbor's oven. I could say an aquamarine sea, the surface broken by spinner dolphins. I could say a field of yellow jonquils, the one behind your best friend's house. I could say, stroke the hot fur of your black dog after he has been lying in the sun. He would stretch at your feet, and if you sat in the porch swing on a summer night, the navy blue sky, a thumbnail moon, mysterious stars, one briefly streaking across the heavens, trailing its tail of silver and white. You tell me you remember the blue chair opening its arms and your husband settling in, the familiar rattle of the Sunday paper, the dark, rich smell of his coffee, the light slanting across your Turkish carpet, and the orange cat in his lap. When you get into the chair, your cat just looks at you from across the room, accusation in her eyes. You rattle the paper, but it doesn't sound right. You drink coffee, which has gone tepid, while you try to think about anything else. Once, I sat in that chair and stared at the walls and at the floor while my coffee lost its heat. I sat for months, the shades drawn, the gate locked, the phone unplugged. I was trying to figure it all out in the dark. Even when my cat finally relented and lay in my lap, I barely noticed her presence. So now I say to you, time. I say cold rice pudding. The black dog and the sweet sound of his tail thump, thump, thumping in your entry hall. You say to me, I am not hungry. I say you don't have to be hungry to enjoy rice pudding. You say to me, it is raining. I say to you, take an umbrella, walk down to the water's edge, unclip the leash, let the dog play in the wet sand, lean against the lime green bench, and watch the sailboats skim in and out of the stippled bay. I have one more poem, and you have to see it as well as hear it. And so my husband Carlos and my friend Marco and my friend Lori are going to pass out copies of this poem. And if you want to keep it afterwards, great. And if you don't want to keep it, great. You can just return it, but it's yours if you want it. While they're passing them out, those of you who are of an age, shall we say, might remember two songs that are referred to in the poem. One is Johnny Ray's Cry Me a River, and the other is Some Enchanted Evening from South Pacific. Okay, does everybody have a copy? Does anybody not have a copy? Okay, just hang on to the extras and we will deal with them in a minute. Crayola Me a River. Once he read that book, threatened to join the Navy, he became so violent I yellowed at him, blew him white through the green door. Let him eggplant himself in the dune grass of the Cape. Let him smoke, hope to steal the sky. This was no salmon-enchanted evening, newly minted in sunglow, sienna hair, cornflower eyes, no mulberry he'd come back in desert sand. No, he had to blizzard bittersweet, raw umber his clothes, try to canary forgiveness, expecting me to blush, not to see him lemon. Didn't we have apricots, he asked me. Didn't we have orchids? Listen to me, I'm Cerise, I want all of you. As if he were polished bright as copper, as if he held a bouquet of carnations or had a wreath of mountain meadow daisies circling his burnished walnut, as if he were marvelous and his house not gaping-doored, unfurnished, as if his tongue weren't gray, trying to razzle-dazzle rose me. I stood mahogany, he tanned burnt orange, hair burst goldenrod, then he turned his back, started for the port, sepia me to almond. Wisteria going? Yes, I remember hot magenta nights, icy pink and watermelon on the tongue, but I'm cerulean. Violets are violets. I frost and cannot forget. This'll be the end of it.